Pro aluminum welding tip. Dip your tungsten in as much as you can. Contaminates it, makes for a really ugly weld. It's gonna be perfectly structurally strong enough, but the side benefit is none of your friends are gonna bother you to weld their stuff. Hello and welcome to the shop. I'm Jared and this is the Questionable Garage, and sitting in front of me is Earl Leeker, our original project car from back when the channel was called Wrench Every Day. It is now a competition burnout car. And in the last episode with Earl, we went down to Kevin at KSR's, we worked on tuning this setup, and then we went to the burnout rivals at Cleetus McFarland's Freedom Factory. And it didn't quite go as planned.
Check out the hater pipes on this thing.
The tip in, pretty strong. The first straight line burnout spin, pretty strong. And then it started cutting out a whole lot.
Oh, she got the thing turned back around.
Kevin and I were experiencing some problems on the dyno, and he had some big concerns with this combo. Like, there's a lot of science we're gonna get to talk through, engine combos and choices and setups that is gonna be better when we get it taken apart. We have a lot to do. We're modifying how the fuel injection setup works, and we're changing camshafts. So we're gonna get started right away today. We're gonna work on getting this intake plenum pulled off. Once we get it all on the table, we'll talk about why none of it was working very well together. And it's one of those things that will bite you in the butt sometimes if you're building for the future and you miss a couple steps for the right now. So let's set up a camera and work on getting this big old tunnel ram yanked off. I'm gonna just try to pull it like that. You know, it's gonna be really good for my back, I'm sure. So time to get wrenching. Take it apart, that's smart. Makes it lighter. Yeah. Oh. The good news is that gasket didn't make it. I could have taken the bumper off and like literally walked right up to it. It's just awkward. There we go. All right, guys, let's talk about a serious problem. I get it. You're spending too much money. You see your friends, they go to the fruit stand, they buy their fancy little white things that they put in their ears. You don't need to do that. I've talked about them before. I'm gonna keep talking about them because I love them. The Raycon Everyday Earbuds. That's right, Raycon is back again, and they are the absolute perfect fit in a workshop, in a gym, anything you're doing. They literally are the everyday earbud. You see them in time lapses quite frequently in my ears because one, they have active noise cancellation, something you are hard pressed to find that works this good at that price point. Two, I can listen to my music. It's win-win. And the everyday earbuds just keep getting better. You have multi-Bluetooth connectivity. You can have it connected to 2 devices at once. So on your phone for phone calls, you're like me, you're having to watch a quick editor's draft of a video, I have them connected to my laptop, and it seamlessly goes between both of them. In the shop, or the gym, you're gonna probably get a little sweaty. I know I do. The Everyday Earbuds IP66 waterproof rating is gonna keep them playing, and you don't have to worry about it. Also, getting the perfect fit is easy. They come with 5 different size silicone earpieces, so you're going to match it perfectly to your unique ear shape. Making them fit your style choice is also just as easy. You've got extra protective exterior covers you can pick. I've got the Galaxy on mine. What that means is you're not gonna accidentally grab someone else's earbuds. You've got yours with your unique style ready to go. Now, if you are ready to stop spending too much money and join the Raycon family, head over to buyraycon.com/questionable. You're gonna save 15% off your Raycon purchase and get free shipping. Life's expensive enough. Getting super high quality earbuds doesn't have to be. Buyraycon.com/questionable, save 15% and you're getting free shipping. Let me know what case you choose. Are you a Galaxy bro or are you gonna go with something else? All right, let's get you guys caught up and we're gonna talk about a little bit of kind of what I alluded to. We picked some wrong parts for the combination for Earl. So we have got our culprits here on the bench. We won't talk about him just yet. We're gonna start with the camshafts. Now this is the camshaft we removed. This is the one we're gonna put back in, and just kind of initially looking at, it's hard to tell a direct difference. If you're really, really close with your eye, you will notice the egg of this cam lobe is significantly more narrow than the egg of this cam lobe. That's essentially your base circle or the duration. Now, let me talk about why the cam choice technically was right for the initial engine build, but is wrong for our combination now. A little spoiler, in my mind, something I would love to do to further the Hot Wheels design is on top of a tunnel ram, mount 1 or 2 superchargers. So, a supercharger camshaft, a blower cam, has a very different style of requirements when you're mixing a blower plus high RPM. It creates a profile that does not work well at all without the supercharger. So, basically the valves weren't staying open long enough. They were opening a ton, but not long enough to create sufficient vacuum in the intake manifold. What that basically meant is anything under 4,000 RPM, we had catastrophic fuel distribution problems, and above that, we had okay fuel distribution. I don't want to say problems, it worked decently. We were able to get the car running pretty good as long as we were in a straight line. But if you noticed on our tip-in during the burnout rivals, great tip-in, and as soon as it spun around, the thing cut out again. And it kept fighting anytime we spun around. Anytime I had to throttle and modulate the throttle blades, lower the RPM, keep control of the car, it would cut out. And that was because our airspeed was actually dropping so low that mixed with the velocity of spinning around, we were throwing our air everywhere. And that's kind of what comes into the tunnel ram. It looks amazing, but because of the long runners and the fuel injectors living up here, some people thought these were carbs. They're actually Holley's stealth throttle bodies. We have fuel injectors up in the top. When you mix the wrong camshaft with low air speeds in a tunnel ram with your fuel being injected up here, it then enters a big collective chamber here and then has to make it down the runners to the heads. That requires the engine to suck, to pull that air in. And unfortunately, we had all the wrong things. None of the parts were fitting and matching and working. So Kevin from KSR jumped in and spec'd out a really good comp cam. So we've got that comp cams to put back into it, which is going to make this a much happier NA engine. And then the other big thing we're doing is I've got parts still coming in from Holley We're going to take our fuel injectors from up here in the collective shared, and I've got bungs, and I'm going to drill and actually convert this to port fuel injection. We're going to bring our fuel injectors down below. What that means is fuel has to work nowhere near as hard to get where it needs to go so it can combust and run and ignite much more evenly. And hopefully it will work because I really want to keep the tunnel ram. The other problem we're running into is I've got big rectangle port heads, like the big horsepower cylinder heads on that engine. And those are little baby oval ports. These are the oval ports, and you can see the outline of our cylinder head. So that alone, 50, 75 horsepower, Holley has an absolutely beautiful drop-on rectangle port EFI manifold in stock. I don't have to modify anything. Get it in a throttle body and bolt it on, but we lose that. And I really want to try to keep it. Lion, which is owned by Holley, has a tunnel ram setup. That's not EFI, but is rectangle port. I can get that, potentially modify that, and throw these on as throttle bodies so we keep our tunnel ram and we match our ports a whole lot better. So we've got to make sure our fuel injectors are placed as ideally as possible. Really, you want them shooting as close as possible to the back of the valve, but we're going to end up with kind of an angle that ends out like that. Yeah, you know, kind of like that. Very accurate. Now let's go to the car. It gets it into the ports, but it is likely going to hit down a little bit. But all in all, we are going to have a substantially better combo than we did in Bradenton for the first event of the year. So, new cam, totally reworking our EFI, possibly a different version of a tunnel ram. If we weren't the questionable garage, we would be getting the low rise, which we know will work and make tons of power. If it doesn't work well, tunnel ram will have to go away because I want to put on the good show. You can't look the part and never actually deliver. So we're going to get this camshaft thrown back in. I'm going to degree it off camera. For time's sake, I'm sorry. Later down the road, we will go through the whole degreeing process. When I'm saying degreeing a cam, it's matching crankshaft rotation to the camshaft rotation as perfectly as possible. We're talking like the minuscule amounts of a degree. For most running conditions, a couple degrees, it'll be okay. But if you're chasing everything or you want it to be perfect, degreeing a cam absolutely does matter. It's got to matter. Plus, there's the simple fact that every professional race engine builder, for all of their max effort stuff, degrees a cam. And basically, degreeing is just to make sure that pin is exactly where that pin is supposed to be in relation to that crank gear. And if you notice, there's a ton of different keyway marks. That's so you can position that any orientation you need to get that camshaft right. All right, it is time to start getting our new tunnel ram built and ready to go, but that also means we got to take the rest of our old tunnel ram apart, namely our throttle bodies. Once we get this off, we're going to talk a little bit more about exactly what we're doing to try to hopefully solve all of those weird tip-in issues and spinning around issues and losing, you know. Listen, we did not put the show on that I really wanted to. It was rough, but you know what? You learn and you improve and you make it better. And that's what we are doing. Probably the biggest downside to this changeover is you're gonna have to redo the whole throttle linkage. Now, we were having throttle cable problems anyway. Namely, it melted. It wasn't that close to the heat. I'm kind of surprised the motion jacket melted in that situation, but things happen. We're building a burnout car. It needs to be a character. It needs to look exciting. And I think Earl does that pretty well. So we'll get our hat off, and then we can look at these throttle bodies. Because again, we're going from a throttle body, TBI fuel injection, and we're modifying everything to make it work as port. Means we got to do some funky rewiring because our wiring harness is all set up, you know, for this, how it came. But why would I leave it how it came? We modify things here. Also, one thing this is gonna do is, I'll go ahead and take, like, a vision I had that if Earl did really good for a season or two, we'd do something new and crazier. V-mounted 671 superchargers on top of a tunnel ram. The Wyand isn't really set up to be able to do that, but it being set up to run and burn the tires off, I like that idea a little more. Holy intake backfires. Wow. If you look, it shouldn't be that dark and black in there. That indicates we're having some intake backfires. Initially, I was pretty worried, but something I'll show you a little bit later on is, I don't know if it was the RPM or why, but our rotor button that contacts the top of the cap kind of got bent for some reason, which is just, I'm confused by it, but that's gonna cause errant ignition timing. Errant ignition timing is gonna cause an intake backfire. We are having all kinds of fuel distribution problems, but we'll get to that. I'm gonna pop these off. So if you're not familiar with this style of fuel injection, TBI, throttle body fuel injection, the injectors actually lived here and would spray the fuel above the throttle blades where it would then be sucked down. It's one step above a carburetor. This style tends to work really good, just not necessarily on a tunnel ram, or if it's on the wrong tunnel ram. So we're gonna come around, I'm gonna grab you handheld, and we're gonna show you, because if you look closely, I don't know if you can tell from that perspective, but where the throttle bodies or carburetors sit on these two intakes, they're quite drastically different, and that contributes to drivability. All right, so as we come up to them, if we look straight down, so this is where your throttle blade would be, or throttle blades. Set this back up just real quick. So you see how you have 4 barrels, and then they go straight down, but if you notice, that one is partially shrouded. If we come over to the Wyand and we stand directly over it, each runner gets pretty stinking close to its own throttle blade. I feel like just changing intake manifolds, I wouldn't have to move the fuel injectors, but we're gonna move them anyway, because that's the better, right thing to do. What we are doing is we've got a set of these Holley EFI fuel rails. We're gonna custom modify this. We've got injector stands, and we are gonna get everything measured up, cut, drill, get our stands installed, mount our brackets to make the fuel rails mount, and move our injectors right to the cylinders. And we are gaining the ability to put the fuel exactly where we want it. We don't have to rely on these giant plenums to distribute evenly. Even though this one is engineered way better to do it, we're gonna take it into our own hands and put the fuel right on the back of the valve. So, none of this is gonna happen talking, so I'm gonna grab the last little bit off the Edelbrock that we need and get it out of here. And no, it's not going in the bin. That's a $600–700 intake. So if you need one, I got one. Pro aluminum welding tip. Dip your tungsten in as much as you can. Contaminates it, makes for a really ugly weld. It's going to be perfectly structurally strong enough, but the side benefit is none of your friends are going to ask you to weld any of their aluminum. Also, don't do that. But we now have our bungs in. We look, so when we're looking straight down, pretty good ejector angles. Not my absolute favorite, but given what we could do, I'm pretty happy with that. This is going to cool off. Then we're going to come in and actually grind those flush to the manifold so they're not protruding out. Once we get that done, we flip it back over, fit the rails with the right injectors, and we build the little stands for the brackets. And then we've successfully completed port fuel injection, aside for the wiring and the plumbing and the blocking of the old holes, the throttle bodies, and putting it all back together. But we're gonna get it done here soon. But remember, tungsten, bury it deep in there so that way none of your friends are going to bother you to weld their stuff. All right, so you can kind of see the rails here. We've got our beautiful intake set up, injectors living in there. I'm off camera, guys. Right here. So obviously with the injectors no longer here, we have holes that air can go through. The way these are designed, and it's actually pretty cool, is this is your fuel rail. Fuel comes in, goes through the machined ports here to the injectors, and then out, and then they go around the ring in here. This is still dirty, we still gotta clean it. But there's no more injectors to fill the hole. So when we were first talking about all the problems we had at the Freedom Factory, Jack Stan, Jimmy, if you watch Cleetus, you know exactly who I'm talking about. We were talking some about it, and I'm like, yeah, I'm just not sure if I'll leave dummy injectors in there or what. And he's like, why don't you just put expansion plugs in there? Makes a whole lot of sense. So they're not freeze plugs, they're expansion plugs. Take the little plug and you just tap them right in there. And when you're finding your socket, they sell punches to do this, but you and I both know you're going to your socket drawer. You want one that's snug but not tight. Because if it's tight, once it pushes in there, it's gonna be impossible to get it back out, or very difficult. So, done. Easy peasy. Now we're not gonna have any air leaks. Although, honestly, now that I look at it, it's before the throttle body. It didn't matter. But you know what does matter? If I don't put these in, it's potentially going to pull air around there, and it's going to make the most awful whistling sound. So, all blocked off. If I ever need to remove them, self-tapper screw in the middle, slide hammer pops it right back out. Boom, all done. Next step in this process. All right, are you guys ready to see our intake manifold? We've made a lot of progress on Earl. We've got the new cam in. It's not degreed yet. I loaned a tool out to someone and it's not come back yet, so I can't start Earl today, which makes me sad. Never mind, I'm missing a lot of other little pieces, but what we are not missing is our new tunnel ram set up with port fuel injection. So again, this is port. Our injectors are down near the intake ports. It was TBI where the injectors were here. And then there's also direct injection where the injector lives and fires directly into the combustion chamber. I can do a lot of things, but I don't know that there's aftermarket direct injection just yet. Man, I'm I'm really excited. One thing I cannot believe how much better this manifold is at is that port alignment. Well, it's not quite adjusting. There we go, with the light a little bit better. Nope, you were right the first time. Well, each of those are our throttle blades are pointed directly over a runner, and you can come over and again, how much of the ports are shrouded on that? That's not good for airflow. It's going to get there, but our goal is to try to make it as easy for air to get there, as well as look cool. Tunnel rams look cool. They look really cool on big blocks and 300Zs with ridiculous batwing headers. So I am very pleased with that intake. It's something that doesn't exist, and we made it with some off-the-shelf parts. So we are so much closer to Earl running correctly so we can do the burnout he deserves. New builds have problems sometimes, and you think you got it all figured out, and then you're sitting in front of however many thousands of people, and it doesn't. But that's okay. We learn, we improve, we get better. But that's going to wrap it up for today. Next time we get Earl, we're going to have him fired up and hopefully doing some test rips. Oh, I'm ready for it to run again. It is loud, and my Raycons feel good under the helmet, at least knocking some of that noise down. It's ridiculous. Order you a set. They're down in the description below. I'm Jared, reminding you guys to always make questionable choices and make it easy for the air to get into your engine. That's all an engine is an air pump, and if you make it hard, it's not going to make the power that it should. We'll see you next time.